Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, KB reps NJ. With the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? It's real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Till Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single time we do this thing. And of course, that usually means Wednesdays, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. But when news drops, when important things happen, we have to try and get here with you guys, have the conversation. John Sapanaro out in Burbank, California, and I am flying solo today, which means it's just my opinions and all of your opinions in the live chat. Remember, to be involved in the live chat, you have to subscribe to the channel on YouTube over at Till Mets Do Us Part. So far, right off the jump, got about 15, 20 people in here. I know we're going up against the Mets game. So there's going to be, we'll see. We'll see how things go. But I wanted to get some stuff off my chest with regards to the news of Clay Holmes being named opening day starter. Jeff McNeil, we found out yesterday, is going to start the season on the IL with an oblique strain. We got to talk about Brett Baty getting some reps over at second base and the fallout from that situation. Luis Angel Acuna, what's his role going to be? And of course, Sean Manaea and Brandon Nimmo seem to be on the mend. We'll get into all of that coming up in just a little bit. Shout out to my co-host, Matt Ibanez, who can't be with us today, but he is in the chat right now, rocking with us as best he can. So speaking of the chat, let's do our quick roll call. We got Stanley Babbage here, Darren Rivera, Douglas Barnes, Matt Ibanez, the aforementioned. We got D in the house. We got Sydney. Who else do we have here? We'll see. Right now, that is it for the live chat, but I expect those numbers to go up. Like I said, I don't know if they'll get to our normal place on Wednesdays when we're not dealing with the weekend, not going up against the Mets game. I know that as far as the East Coast is concerned, weather was a bit better today, so people probably antsy and itching to get outside. But I wanted to talk Mets baseball, so we are here to talk Mets baseball. I should mention this show, Till Mets Do Us Part, free and available wherever you get your podcast, the video format right here on YouTube. And of course, you can get it on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your audio podcast. It'll drop by tomorrow morning, if not sooner. So with all that said, let's get right back into this Mets conversation. And we'll kick things off with Clay Holmes, man. Clay Holmes, opening day starter for our New York Mets. So this is kind of the worst kept secret for a while. This is something that a lot of signs were pointing to. There was a lot of allusion to the fact that he might be your opening day starter even before the injuries hit the rotation for the likes of Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas. It just seemed like all the signs were pointing in that direction. Well, earlier today, about an hour or two ago, we find out it is officially official. Clay Holmes will get the nod, will get the distinguished start on opening day against the Houston Astros. And look, shout out to Clay Holmes for working his ass off to get to this point. I know part of it is a numbers game. But before we talk about the numbers game, before we talk about the injuries, before we talk about, setting up your rotation for success right out of the gate, this is a guy who was a starter, not a great one, goes over to the Yankees, becomes a great late inning reliever and closer. I know he lost his closer job, but, the stuff was there. He gets bounced out of the closer's role, goes into the eighth inning with the Yankees and, kind of regains his form. Mets sign him. Kind of shock the world when they do. take this flyer on him, give him this 2 to 3 year deal. Let's call it a 2-year deal because, you got options and opt-outs and all that stuff. But they give him a multi-year contract. And on the surface, it's like, oh my God, this is going to be great. This guy will set up for Edwin Diaz. He has closer experience in New York. He's a big game pitcher in New York. He has 2 elite wipeout pitches. This guy is going to be a great setup man. We overpaid a little bit as far as setup men and bullpen people are concerned, but you know what? It's going to be worth it. And then it's like, hold on. No. He's going to be a starter. And even then, after it was dropped, people were like, well, we'll see where this goes. We'll see how long the Mets commit to this Clay Holmes as a starter experiment, even though with the Pirates, like I said, came up as a starting pitcher. But it seemed like Mets fans, and, for a time, I'll admit even myself, sort of in disbelief, right? We're like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, that this guy is not pitching in late and close games in the 8th inning, sometimes in the 9th inning, filling in for Diaz, whatever. But then the Mets just kept doubling down, tripling down on it. You got David Stearns talking about how they're committed to it. Carlos Mendoza talking about how they're committed to it. Then all of a sudden, all the players start to slowly report. And obviously, a lot of position players get down there earlier than they're supposed to for spring training. Starting pitchers usually get down there way early. And that was the case with Clay Holmes. We find out that not only are the Mets committed to this, but Clay Holmes is 100% committed to this. Clay Holmes has been in Port St. Lucie working out pretty much longer than anybody else with regards to getting ready and gearing up for the season. And then, like Ibby, my co-host, always mentions when we're talking about Clay Holmes, is that this is a guy who over the last several years has basically prepared, even though he was coming out of the bullpen, to throw like 130 innings, 140, maybe 150 innings. This is a guy who prepares a certain way, and that starter's mentality never went away. So now you fast forward to where we're at this point today, where he gets the opening day nod. And like I said in the open, it is a testament to the work that he's put in, showing up earlier than everybody else, being geared up. I think in his first spring training start, he went 3 innings. A lot of guys go 1 inning in those first starts. It just shows you where he was, where his level of focus, commitment, building his arm strength up, building his endurance up, building his stamina up. And I think that you have to reward guys for that type of commitment. We always talk on this show about wanting guys who want to be here. Well, I think that extends to, guys who become easy to root for because you see the work ethic. And I like this one here from Ronald saying that Mamba mentality. I think that's what you're starting to really see from Clay Holmes. There's this focus, there's this determination to be the best, adding to his repertoire, as some folks are saying here. Yep. Ronald said that, adding to the repertoire. We got Odd Villain saying Clay Holmes started listening to drill this offseason. But you see it now with the ability to stay focused, go out there, get into the pitching lab, maximize. This is not a young pitcher we're talking about. He's not over the hill, but this is a guy who has had tremendous success in the big leagues over the last several years. But he goes into this Mets vaunted pitching lab. He starts adding induced vertical break to pitches. He starts doubling his repertoire as far as pitches are concerned, like Ronald said. He already had 2 elite level pitchers, that sweeper slider and the sinker. But now he's got this kick change, and he's getting damn near 18 inches of induced vertical break on a 4-seam fastball. And look, Ibby and I have been pretty bullish on the Clay Holmes starter experiment from the beginning. We both think he's going to be good. And shout out to Ryan Finkelstein over at Locked On Mets. He's been bullish on this as well. Shout out to Joe DeMeo from the Mets pod, also very bullish on the Clay Holmes starter experiment. But all of that culminates with him getting the nod on opening day. So look, it's important. We all get excited for opening day. You want to start off the season in a big way. You want to start off the season on a winning note like the Mets have done so often in their history. Even in terrible years, the Mets seem to win on opening day almost every time. After opening day, I'm not sure how much this matters. But again, to reward the guy who was there the longest in spring training, who was working, I don't want to say other people aren't working hard because obviously they are, they're all professional athletes, but was working so hard to get to this level of legitimacy. He doesn't want to have this blow up in his face. So rewarding the guy with the opening day start, it makes sense from a vibes perspective. We talked about vibes last year with the 2024 Mets, but it also makes sense from an on the field perspective when you look at who is available to the Mets to start on opening day. Again, when you sit here and you realize that Clay Holmes has been throwing since January, the arm is loose, the arm is ready. He's throwing more innings right now in spring than most guys because he's ramping up, and he has been ramped up faster. And then you look at Sean Manaea goes down with injury. We'll talk about him later. You look at Frankie Montas goes down with injury. He'll be out a lot longer. We'll talk about him later on. But then you look at Senga coming back from injury last year. Also, the injury concerns with Kodai Senga over the course of his career, both here and in Japan, well documented. He's got to ramp back up. Then you look at David Peterson, who had a great year last year, but what's his role on this team? He's trying to solidify that he is not this up and down boom or bust pitcher that he's shown over the course of his career. He's trying to show that now that his hip is healthy, he's more like the guy he was last year than he was 2 years ago. So it really comes down to the Mets didn't have a lot of other options on opening day. Again, not taking anything away from Clay Holmes because he clearly deserved it. But this also makes the most sense from a numbers game approach. I think there's a chance, outside chance, maybe Sean Manaea, if everything went well for him in spring training, that he gets the ball on opening day, maybe. But I think the Mets were still going to lean towards Clay Holmes on opening day, probably push Sean Manaea into that second spot, and then let Sean Manaea pitch the home opener. Because whoever pitches the second game of the season will line up for the home opener, and I think that's where the Mets were going. And that brings me to Kodai Senga. It seems like Kodai Senga now will go in that second game, and that will line him up for the home opener, which again, I think is nice for Mets fans. I think the obvious choices for Mets fans in the home opener were either Sean Manaea for everything he did last year, or Kodai Senga for, the few innings he gave us last year. And of course, what he did in his quote unquote rookie season. Of course, the guy's been a star in Japan for years, but I think those were the two obvious choices for the home opener. So this Clay Holmes thing just seemed like it was a foregone conclusion almost immediately. And then when you look at the other fallout from this, Kodai Senga, again, pitching 5 innings last year in the regular season, and then a couple innings in the playoffs. When you look at him basically having a lost year, you want to try to maximize what you can get out of him in a given season. So he's already a guy who's a little quirky with his mechanics, with his knowing his body, knowing when to pitch, how to pitch. And he's already a guy who is used to the 6 days, six-man rotation, pitching every 6 days for coming from Japan. So I think if you have him pitch game 2 of the season, that lines him up very nicely to get a few extra days off over the course of basically the first month. Whoever's pitching in that game 2 slot, if they start to go on regular rest, they're not going to have regular rest. They're going to have some extra days built in. So I think all of this is by design. And it's just really, really nice to see the Mets reward guys who deserve it and have a bit of forward thinking. Because I think we're all used to, or we had become so used to, the Wilpon Mets who, they go out and they sign a guy, and then you have Jeff Wilpon, and he's like, that guy's got to pitch on opening day regardless. And you can see him, kind of overstepping the GM or the president of baseball ops, overstepping the manager and just kind of mandating things. And that's not how the Mets are run anymore. The Mets are run intelligently. The Mets are run like a modern baseball organization that is at the top of the league. And again, we talked about this on the Wednesday show. The Mets aren't quite there yet. I think in terms of you want to see some repeated success and sustainability to put the Mets up there with the likes of the Dodgers and the classes of the league. But in terms of the early returns on the Cohen era, and especially the Cohen-Stearns era, the Mets are as good at running a baseball team as any franchise in the sport. So let's jump into the comments here. We got Odd Villain just saying, yeah, the Mets are run right. I'm going to try to get into as many comments as I can because I want to hear from you guys for sure. But it's hard to run the show, talk into the camera, and moderate the comments all at the same time. Appreciate you guys jumping in with the comments here as far as Senga cruising along with regards to the game being on. 3 up, 3 down. Yes, the game is on. Yes, you do love to see it, D. Appreciate that. We got Zero Cool saying Manaea is on the down year of his up-down career cycle. His FIP was worse than Peterson and McGill's last year. Forget about Manaea this year, regardless of the 25 mil. Listen, man, people tend to be people of Manaea's age, over 30. They tend to be what the back of their baseball card says they are. So that is a hard track record to argue with as far as this up-down trend that Zero Cool points out. But I'm not going to be a downer on it now. I gave my opinion with regards to what I thought of Manaea and the re-signing. And obviously there's risks involved. The guy's 33 years old. You're paying him $25 million a year, not over a long time, but $25 million a year is a lot of money. You're paying him closer to the top end of pitchers in baseball, starting pitchers. So there's some risk involved. Can he repeat what he did for most of last season? Who knows? Is that funky delivery going to throw him out of whack? Who knows? Is that funky delivery going to make him get hurt more often? Who knows? It's really hard to tell. He goes out and he mimics Chris Sale. Chris Sale wins a Cy Young, but Chris Sale also never healthy. Wasn't healthy down the stretch for the Braves. So look, there's plenty you can nitpick as far as that's concerned with Manaea, but I don't want to focus on that here today. So I want to know in the comments, just because it'll be easier for me to track, how do you guys feel about Clay Holmes getting the nod on opening day? Again, I'm not going to go back and reiterate all my points. Guy deserves it. And it makes sense for the Mets with the pitchers that they have available. Frankie Montas being out for a couple months. Sean Manaea being out right now, but on the mend. Senga having to build back up after a lost year. Obviously, Peterson trying to build off of what he did last year. And then everybody else who's factoring into the rotation right now. Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, Paul Blackburn. They were never getting the opening day nod. One of those guys pitching for you on opening day, you got some trouble. Although Tyler McGill has pitched on opening day like 2 or 3 times and has filled in admirably every time he's done it. So, there's a lot you could dump on that guy for as well. But with regards to stepping up on opening day, it's really not one of them. He's been good. He's taken the ball, in some trying spots. I think one year he filled in for DeGrom on not a lot of notice. So, you're filling in for prime DeGrom for the Mets on opening day. Hat tip to you right there. While those comments come in, of course, the other big news that dropped yesterday, and I was trying to go live yesterday and talk about it, and then my schedule changed kind of last minute, and I couldn't find the time to go live because I like to give you guys, even on these solo shows, at least 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever, to talk about what's going on. And I didn't have that time. But now, the way it shook out with this Holmes news dropping today, I'm happy I didn't go live yesterday because now it gives us a fuller show here today. So the other big news that happened yesterday came out of Mets land. The injury bug continues to bite. This time it gets Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil with a slight oblique strain. Obliques are tough. You like to hear the word slight better than, something that's a high grade strain, something that's more severe. Hopefully this goes the way of Sean Manaea's oblique strain, where they think it's going to be a shorter one and it turns out to be a shorter one, but you just never know. Honestly. You never know how long these things can persist, and it's tricky for pitchers and it's tricky for hitters. That's the problem with obliques. Like, if you've ever played baseball, I don't care what level, slow pitch, softball, little league, it doesn't matter. Obliques, you can't do a thing on the baseball field without your obliques, your intercostal muscles, everything in your core. So, we'll see. Now, you guys know my opinion on Jeff McNeil. I am not a Jeff McNeil fan at all. Full stop. I have called his contract an albatross. I have spent most of the offseason trying to find ways to get him off the team because I think that he is clogging up a 26-man roster spot. I have said that his versatility at this point in his career and the way the Mets are currently constituted is overblown, in that he is your starting second baseman, and that's what he's best at. That's what he's suited for. I've said a lot of things about Jeff McNeil. Now, having said that, you shouldn't root for injuries. You don't celebrate injuries. I don't want to see a guy get hurt, So I think anybody who's celebrating an injury is misguided. But what you can celebrate here is the opportunity that it provides, because we all have our favorites. We all have our players that we root for in terms of the young guys. I don't like Brett Baty. My co-host, Ibby, he likes Baty a bit more. Some of you guys like Baty. Some of you guys don't like Baty. Some of you guys love Acuna. I don't even love Acuna. I just like Acuna better. And now you're going to see those guys on the team. So again, you don't want to celebrate the injury, but you can celebrate the opportunity that it provides. And in this case, it provides an opportunity very specifically in the short term for Brett Baty and Luis Angel Acuna. It seems like right now, the Mets think McNeil will be out for about 3 to 4 weeks, which is really only a few games into the regular season if everything goes according to plan. Maybe he's out a week of the regular season. Maybe it's a bit more. You want to call it 2 weeks, whatever. He's not going to be ready for opening day. So now you have a situation where it went from Baty versus Acuna to more than likely Brady and Acuna making this team. And I think that's where they need to go. I don't buy into this Donovan Walton situation. I don't buy into any of these other, backup journeyman middle infielder players making this team. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. Because if you were going to go that route, and it's not to dump on these guys, but if you were going to go the route of Donovan Walton or whatever the hell, then why didn't you just sign Jose Iglesias? Because it would have been really easy to sign a guy back who hit 340, played great defense all around the infield, was a great vibes guy, fit the team. And I already said why I thought it was smart for the Mets to not sign him. But if you're seriously considering carrying Donovan Walton, even with the injury to Jeff McNeil, and not just giving Acuna and Baty the opportunity to break camp with the big club, I think that's counterintuitive to not signing Jose Iglesias to begin with. He's a better player than Donovan Walton. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, I can't see a way, barring injury or complete disaster, offensively, defensively, whatever. I don't see a way that Acuna and Baty both don't make this team. Baty has hit. Acuna has not really, although he's starting to hit a bit better recently. Baty has hit tremendously, but Baty always hits in AAA and he always hits in spring training. Acuna can play defense. That's his bread and butter. Defense and speed, unquestionable with regards to Luis Angel Acuna. Everybody talks about Baty being an above average third baseman. I think he's fine. I don't know that he's necessarily, I guess he's slightly above average. Fine. But I don't know that he can play other positions. We'll talk about that in a second. Jump into the comments here. Shout out to Armand saying, hey, all, what up? A lot of good comments coming in. Zero Cool saying Clay Holmes will be the best starter on the team this year. It's an easy call. I agree with the first part. I don't know that it's an easy call. If you're down on Manaea, having the up-down years, like Zero Cool is, I could see why you would say Holmes will be better than Manaea. And if you're not sure what you're going to get from Senga, I could see why you'd say Holmes is going to be better than Senga. And I think that's going to put him in the category of best starting pitcher on the team this year. Because I think it's really those three guys. But I don't think it's an easy call because let's not forget what Senga did 2 years ago. 2.98 ERA. He got Cy Young votes. I think he finished 7th for the Cy Young. Finished 2nd for Rookie of the Year. Guy struck out a ton of people in not a lot of innings. Over 200 people in like 160 innings or whatever. And again, if you're not buying the Manaea hype, you think he's going to have the down year because that's what he does. He's up 1 year, down the next. But he was an ace for us last year. So look, I think it's a good problem to have if these guys are all vying for that spot. One thing is for sure, I think the starting pitching is going to be better than a lot of Mets fans think. And I think the starting pitching is going to be better than a lot of what mainstream media, like people around the MLB, national media, stuff like that, think with regards to this team. Ibby saying, hey, this Juan Soto guy is pretty fucking good. Hope he makes the squad. I believe that he hit a home run, Juan Soto. Of course he did. He's great. I think so because now Carson coming in 396 feet, 111.4 miles per hour in exit velocity, 29-degree launch angle, home run in 24 of the 30 parks. Yeah, Soto is fantastic. So it's nice to see him doing his thing. I love this from Odd Villain. Soto is the real Martian, hating on Dominguez over there with the Yankees. It's good to see. I know that the numbers don't matter, and I know that the stats don't matter because it's spring training, but it is good to see Juan Soto just being Juan Soto immediately. We don't have to waste too much time talking about him today because obviously there's a lot of stuff to dive into. We know he's going to be here. We know what he's going to offer. Ronald saying the problem with signing Jose Iglesias is that it would piss fans off if he eventually gets DFA'd. Didn't need that energy midseason. We didn't talk about that, but that's a really good point. We didn't talk about that during the entire saga of Jose Iglesias. Will he come back? Is he coming back? What kind of deal is he going to get? Did he really offer the Mets, an opportunity to sign him? And, did the Mets really offer him a 1-year deal, but he wanted a multi-year deal? I think a lot of that stuff was smoke and mirrors because he winds up signing a minor league deal with San Diego. So unless a deal that he had on the table evaporated while he was waiting for the Mets, who knows? But it seems like a lot of that wasn't exactly true. But the point is, Ibby and I were not big on bringing back Iglesias for all the reasons we just talked about, playing the youth, not locking down the roster, not forcing another guy onto the team where you kind of just know what you're going to get. And also the 110% luxury tax on any deal that you're going to give to a guy like Jose Iglesias. It's a $3 million deal. It's really like 6.5 or whatever. So we didn't talk about this, but this is a good point. I don't think he's going to be bad enough to get DFA'd, Ronald, honestly, from whatever team he's on. But you're right, where it would put a bad taste in the mouths. And that's why I always say the cliche that I constantly bring up, which is sometimes the best part about finding lightning in a bottle is knowing when to take the cap off and release the lightning again. And Jose Iglesias is the perfect example of that. Because for all the vibes that he provided, and it was more than vibes, to be clear. He was great on the field. But for all the great vibes that he provided for this team in 2024, what if he regressed to the mean? The guy's a good average hitter for his career, but not 340. So, if he doesn't have a good season and he was in danger of being DFA'd again, which I don't think would happen, but it would mess with the vibes of this team. So I think from that standpoint, it's a good comment, although I disagree that it would happen. The other part of this is we get Brett Baty playing second base yesterday. You guys know, like McNeil, I don't love Brett Baty. I don't love Brett Baty as a baseball player. I find myself, look, I'm always going to root for the guy on the team, right? I'm a Mets fan. If you're wearing a Mets jersey, I want you to do well. I'd rather be happy than right. At the end of the day, I'm a fan. Ibby saying, learn to love him, pal. I don't know. We'll see. So, I'm not into Brett Baty the way that other people are. And sometimes I'll admit, I find myself getting angry when people are talking up Brett Baty because I don't understand where it comes from. Save for the fact that he was a first-round draft pick and a highly ranked prospect. Okay, well, baseball is littered with the bones of first-round draft picks and highly ranked prospects that never turn out to be anything. Odd Villain saying future Marlin, Brett Baty, and Ibby following it up by saying, unless he's part of the package to land me Sandy Alcantara. Yeah. Look, what I saw yesterday from Brett Baty playing second base, I wasn't at the game, but I watched all the clips online. And I tweeted this out. I stand by it. This is unscientific. But to me, and look, not everything in a sport, I believe that analytics, advanced statistics, regular statistics, they all have a place, of course. But I also think that for a long time, baseball was run off of the eye test. Now, I don't think that's the only way you can do it. I think it's actually foolish to not use all of the data at your fingertips. But some guys do pass the eye test, some guys don't. We just got done talking about Jose Iglesias. Jose Iglesias is not going to be an analytics darling. But Jose Iglesias can play ball. When you watch him, you can tell that he can play ball. Right? And I think that's kind of the best example I can give, because when I look at Brett Baty, when I watched him yesterday, I'm not a scout. I'm not a major league coach. I never played at the level that Brett Baty plays at. So, take it with a grain of salt. But he doesn't look like a second baseman. He's athletic, 100%. He made 2 very athletic plays. But he didn't necessarily look smooth at second base. Now, do I think that he's athletic enough to, with a lot of time, be an average or above average second baseman? I think he can be an average second baseman. But here's the caveat. Why? Why would you do that if you're the Mets? Luis Angel Acuna is already a plus second baseman right now, today, Friday, March 14th, 2025, 3:37 p.m. on the West Coast. Luis Angel Acuna is a plus defender at second base. Jet Williams, I've not seen Jet play, but from all the accounts, Jet Williams is a plus defender at second base, if that's where he were to play. Now, who knows if he'll be a center fielder, Who knows if he'll be a Ben Zobrist type, whatever. But playing second base, he's a plus defender there. And I know there's been a lot of issues made with Ronnie Mauricio's defense. But Ronnie Mauricio is a middle infielder by trade. He's not a great shortstop, but I think he automatically becomes at least an average second baseman by sliding over the way that so many players do. So with Baty, I just want to know, if it were me, I wouldn't be running him out there in this position. Now, I understand this sentiment. Ronald says it's because of Baty's bat. If he plays average defense, you play the bat every day. But what bat? Now, is Baty a higher rated hitting prospect than Acuna? Yes. He's a better rated hitting prospect than Acuna, 100%. Baty grades out to B to this point. Mauricio needs to fix his K rate. Baty grades out to be a more consistent hitting prospect than Mauricio. We'll leave Jet Williams out of the conversation because he's further away, remains to be seen. You know, he's either the Mets, top prospect, second prospect, no worse than third prospect, depending on who you talk to. So I think we could say for right now, because of the unknown with Jet Williams, probably a quote unquote better hitting prospect than Brett Baty, because we've seen Brett Baty fail. We have not seen Jet Williams fail. But where is this offense? He's doing it right now in spring training. It's great. But Baty has made teams out of spring training. Baty has forced the Mets' hand, 2 weeks into a season to basically move on from Eduardo Escobar to give him the job, and then he couldn't run with it. Baty always hits in AAA. So I just need to see it. I need to see it when it counts. Because this comment here about his bat, yes, if Baty can be the hitter that some people seem to think he can be, obviously you want him in the lineup. Because I'll tell you this, he's not going to be as bad defensively at second base as like a Daniel Murphy, right? And if he can hit, you'll take the average defense, as Ronald puts it here, because of the plus bat. I just don't see a plus bat. And that's me. I might be wrong. But I don't see a plus bat. He has to prove it. He really, really has to prove it. I mean, Zero Cool saying Baty gets a month. I don't know, man. Is he going to have a month? Because where does he play when McNeil comes back? Assuming McNeil is on the mend and it happens rather quickly, where does Baty play? Does he just be a bench piece? I don't know. See, I just don't think Baty fits this team. That's the other thing. I think there was a lot talked about whether or not this injury to McNeil can see someone, whether it's Baty or Acuna, Wally Pip McNeil, right? Shout out to Ryan Finkelstein for Locked On Mets. He did a whole show on this morning. But Baty already kind of got replaced. Vientos took Baty's spot as far as I'm concerned. I think now it's just evaluating what you have to show it to other teams so that you can put him in a package for Sandy or Dylan Cease or, whoever. Because to me, I don't see a spot that Baty fits on this team. You want to tell me you can hang on to him for one more season Pete opts out, which he more than likely will do if he has just a decent Pete year. And then maybe Baty hits and Baty's your third baseman. Vientos moves over to maybe. That's a lot of moving parts. I'm not thinking that far ahead. I'm thinking about right now, the fact that this guy is 25 years old and to this point is proven to be a quad A player. Mashes AAA, mashes spring training, comes to the big show, can't hit a lick, can't lift the ball enough, can't drive the ball enough. I know Ibby says it's the upside of the bat that's better than what we have at the position at the moment. Jet's not ready. Ronnie's not ready. Yeah. Again, I can't argue with the fact that Baty is projected to be a better hitter than Acuna. But I don't know. I just don't trust him. To me, he looks like a guy who's not going to be in the league in a couple of years. And I know people get mad at me for that, but it just is what it is. AB follows it up by saying, could easily see a platoon at second base if Baty does show to hit. That I could see. Because one thing that is true of this situation is that Acuna and Baty complement each other very well. Baty's left-handed hitter. Acuna's a right-handed hitter. Acuna is better defensively. Acuna has more speed. Baty theoretically has a better bat and has more pop. He definitely has more pop. That's true. So you could see a situation where you just split the diff, straight platoon. Baty plays against righties. Acuna plays against lefties, at least while McNeil is out. And then you bring in Acuna for defense late. Fine. There was even some suggestions of if you're carrying both of those guys on the team and it's the 8th inning and it's a 2-1 game, you can move Baty from second to third and then put Acuna in to play second and your entire infield defense is upgraded. Smart. I don't argue with that. I can't argue with some of this. But the problem is for me is that the Mets have too many. They're a versatile team right now. But they have too many square peg round holes because of the likes of Jeff McNeil and Starling Marte. You see how quickly that changes when McNeil goes down. Because with McNeil being injured, now all of a sudden you look over and you see, well, you can carry Baty and Acuna. You could try them both out. You could platoon them both at second base. You could see who hits. You could also, if Baty starts to hit, then maybe Baty plays a little bit more third base and Vientos DHs a little bit. You can move some things around. But I think once McNeil comes back, and guys, he is coming back, then what? Because McNeil comes back and Baty is hitting and Acuna isn't, and you send Acuna down, which could very well happen, then you have two left-handers playing second base, essentially platooning at second. Two guys that offer a similar profile. I know Baty, again, projects for more power and McNeil's a different kind of hitter, but they both hit from the same side of the plate. You're hoping to get average defense from both of them. And to this point, there's not a lot of difference. Again, to this point in their careers, there's not a lot of difference from what they actually do offensively. They're both underwhelming offensive options right now today. So it's tricky. Yeah, this is my point. Zero. There is a logjam. Baty, Acuna, Jet, Mauricio, Gilbert, Clifford down the line. It's a good problem to have. Versatile squads are Stern's calling card. I love a versatile baseball team. And with these guys, when you're talking about all prospects, good problem to have. When you're talking about Marte, $20 million weak side platoon DH, that's not a good problem. You talk about Jeff McNeil, $15.7 million second baseman that you hope can regain form, heavy air quotes on that, to the tune of winning a batting title. And what does a batting title get you? Luis Ariz has 3 batting titles. He's been traded 3 times. So versatility is important. It is a good problem to have when you're talking about prospects. When you're talking about position, like when you're talking about players who are on the team, players who are making money, it's harder to add some of these guys in when they don't have the same versatility. So if you're already carrying Marte, you have to. You're already carrying McNeil, you have to. Acuna makes sense because he's versatile. He could play second. He could play short. He could play center field. He could probably play third. But if you're already carrying McNeil and Marte, and now you're carrying Baty, Baty can play third, can't play left, can't play right, can't play shortstop, maybe could play second base. Now you've created a logjam. Douglas saying the logjam is exactly why Baty needs this chance to, at the very least, build his trade stock. And he's going to get it. He is going to get it. And I understand what you're saying, Zero. Marte is only here for this year and McNeil only for the next 2. I understand that. But I'm just saying, in the short term, their presence limits your flexibility as to what you could do with the rest of the roster. Because I'll ask you guys this, and then we'll move on, because I've spent way too much time talking about this. I'll ask you guys this in the comments. Let me know. If you could have a situation where, come what may, Baty and Acuna could have an open spot on the 26-man roster basically all year, and you find out what you have in either one of them or both, or you have to carry Jeff McNeil, therefore you can only carry one of Baty or Acuna, therefore you're not getting to know everything you can about either player, which one would you pick? Doesn't matter if you love Baty, hate Baty. Doesn't matter if you love Acuna, hate Acuna. Doesn't matter what your goal is, to win in 2025, to just be super competitive, whatever. You'd rather have Acuna and Baty on the team at the same time. 100%. And that is the logjam that a guy like McNeil creates, even if it's only for 2 years. That is the problem that a guy like Marte creates, even if it's just for 1 year. Why do you think the Mets tried to trade Marte? I digress. The other thing I wanted to talk about, can't give you guys more than an hour of me just ranting and raving, right? The other thing I want to talk about real quick, Sean Manaea, cleared by doctors to come back and resume getting ready for the season. We talked about Manaea a little bit in the top as it relates to opening day starters, as it relates to the current state of the Mets rotation. But it seems like, again, obliques are tricky, side muscles are tricky, but it seems like this is going to be on the shorter side like they originally said, and that is good news. Whether you love Sean Manaea, hate Sean Manaea, whether you think, like Zero Cool, he's going to be on the downtrend of his up-down trend, it's still, like D says, such good news because the Mets need Sean Manaea. They're paying him to be a big part of this rotation. You can agree or disagree with whether or not you think he can live up to that. Doesn't matter. They're paying him for that. You want him out there. So it is very, very, very important that this seems to be on the short side. It seems that the Mets medical staff was right about it. Seems to be they caught it in time. They stopped him in time, and now he can begin to ramp back up. Cindy saying, great news about Manaea. I hope they take it slow. I hope he isn't rushed back. I think they will take it slow, and I don't think he will be rushed back. Ronald saying, who hates Sean Manaea? No, I'm just saying. I don't think a lot of people do. I think even people who, disliked bringing him back for whatever reason, I don't think anybody has an issue with him, but you know what I'm saying. He just needs to be out there doing what he was paid to do. Also, by the way, I didn't have this on the ticker, but I just mentioned the Mets medical staff. Shout out to the Mets medical staff. And how often have we said that in our time as Mets fans? Poor Ray Ramirez used to get booed off the field. Mets notoriously bad with handling injuries. And it seems like it has all changed for the positive, right? Take a sip of water there. Shout out to the Mets medical staff, who not only got guys in here with injury concerns from the pitching side, like Severino and even Manaea, even Senga, was able to get them through strong seasons, able to get them paid. But Severino on Foul Territory today comes out and says, yeah, the Yankees training staff was good. The Mets is otherworldly, or whatever he said, fantastic, whatever hyperbolic word he used to describe how good the Mets training staff is. That's important. The best ability is availability. Keeping guys fresh, learning how to manage guys' workloads. I know everybody wants to play it like it's MLB The Show, and I know a lot of fans want guys to be out there for 162 games every year. Everybody wants to see, Cal Ripken Jr. out there again. That's not going to happen. It's not the way baseball is played anymore. As a matter of fact, as Mets fans right now, currently, you should be happy because you've got a shortstop in Lindor who doesn't like to take games off. You have a first baseman in Pete Alonso who doesn't like to take games off. As a matter of fact, last year played in all 175 games the Mets played, including the postseason. And you just add Juan Soto, a guy who will take his spots but likes to play more often than not. That's great. That's more than most teams have. Thank you, Armand, always keeping me honest. The Sevy Foul Territory interview was last night. You know what I mean? Last night, today, whatever. I saw it this morning. Apologize for the West Coast being late to the game. Finally, last thing we have to talk about. Brandon Nimmo. But before we talk about Brandon Nimmo, I did star a bunch of comments here. And I want to get to your points. Zero Cool says, short term, it sucks. You're right. Talking about the logjam on the 26-man roster. GSD, shout out GSD, over on Twitter saying, Acuna, if you have to carry McNeil, you need a backup shortstop. Acuna is more flexible. Cindy saying, agreed, I want the kids. That's why I want McGolf gone. Zero Cool followed it up by saying Acuna. D is with it, Acuna. And then you have Odd Villain saying, Baty, Long Island Ducks MVP. Maybe, listen, I'm not rooting for it. You want these guys to succeed. Seems like a decent dude, whatever, but I could see it. Douglas Barnes, shout out Douglas, saying, I wouldn't be surprised to still see Acuna start in the minors. I feel like Baty is going to get the spot anyway, and McNeil's injury won't keep him out for long. I don't think it's crazy, Douglas. I don't, but I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't not roster Luis Angel Acuna to roster Donovan Walton. I just, again, that just seems counterintuitive to what the Mets are trying to do to me. But maybe they go that route. Maybe they say exactly what you're thinking, which is McNeil will be back in like a week or, 10 days after the season starts. Brett Baty will play every day. We'll bring up a guy who's glove first. Donovan Walton can come in as a defensive replacement, and we're going to make Acuna play every day in AAA. I could see it. I wouldn't do it, but I could see it. I would have both guys on the opening day roster, Acuna and Baty. Anyway, last thing I wanted to talk about, Brandon Nimmo. We talked about the injury side on the negative with McNeil, the fallout from that. And we talked about the injury side on the positive with Sean Manaea being on the mend. You can add Nimmo into the positive column. Nimmo gets into the game yesterday. That's important. The results really don't matter right now with a guy like Nimmo. I don't know about you guys. I just want to see Nimmo play baseball because I'm a little worried about Brandon Nimmo long term. Yeah, Zero Cool saying Nimmo can go in the Machado trade. I'm worried about Brandon Nimmo over the long haul. I'm not worried about if Brandon Nimmo's healthy. I think Brandon Nimmo's going to be fine. I think Brandon Nimmo's a much better player than I ever gave him credit for when he first came up. I've talked about that. Brandon Nimmo's a big part of this team. He's right there alongside Lindor in terms of leadership and heart and soul. He's an easy guy to root for, always hustles, likable, has made himself into a very good player, like I said. But he's got 6 more years on his deal. And this plantar fasciitis, bad knee, I'm worried about that. So I just want Nimmo playing baseball. I want him out there playing baseball in the spring to show that he can be a part of this team, because the fallout, if you have Nimmo hobbled, is bad, because it goes back to what I was saying before about Marte and McNeil. You already have Marte, who is clogging up a spot on the roster. Nimmo needs to play left field, like not every day, but a good amount of the time. You need to have Nimmo playing left field. Obviously, Soto's going to be in right. I think Siri's going to get the lion's share of the time in center field as long as he hits enough. Tyrone Taylor's a great 4th outfielder to have. Plays too much, gets a little exposed. Jesse Winker is a great backup to have, but he's not a great defender. He could definitely slot in for you if Nimmo needs to DH a game here or there, whatever the case is. That's fine. But the team is better if Nimmo's playing left field. GSD, I don't know if he means it in the sense that I mean this, but he says if Nimmo isn't playing, you can have McNeil, Baty, and Acuna. You kind of need McNeil then, because McNeil needs to go play some left field if Nimmo misses any kind of time. He factors in the outfield mix. But I would rather have Nimmo, Baty, and Acuna than McNeil. I want a healthy Brandon Nimmo. And this is my point from Armand. Nimmo might have to be a full-time DH sooner rather than later. And I don't think I don't know, man. You want a full-time DH in Brandon Nimmo? The offensive profile that he has? Could do worse. I think he could do better. Full-time DH. Full-time. JD Martinez doesn't play the field. Big Papi Ortiz, Edgar Martinez doesn't play the field DH and doesn't really platoon, right? Like, you could look at Jesse Winker and say that from a offensive profile, he's a poor man's Brandon Nimmo in terms of the offensive profile that he has. But he's also not a full-time DH. He's a platoon DH, bench player, extra outfielder. Brandon Nimmo with 6 years on his deal has to transition to a full-time DH. Whew, man. That's tough. Zero Cool throwing some shade. Nimmo is my favorite player. He smiles, great base runner who doesn't steal bases, has 0 arm, but is a good outfielder. He's so unique. Great on-base percentage. True. Ibby saying, Nimmo, the DH, making way for Kyle Tucker. Sure. But Nimmo concerns me. He does. He doesn't concern me for this year necessarily, although if he can't play more than he can, that again has a trickle-down effect. We talked about the trickle-down effect with Clay Holmes, Sean Manaea, Montas, the rotation. Me and Ibby talked on Wednesday about the trickle-down effect from the Alvarez injury. All of a sudden, Torrens becomes your starter. Now you've got a guy who profiles to be, a third catcher, slides into your backup in Hayden Senger, more than likely. So the trickle-down effect worries me with Brandon Nimmo if he can't play this year. But I think he'll be fine if he can play. I just need to see him out there, man. And I don't want to open up a can of worms, but that's why the contract that the Mets gave Brandon Nimmo, again, I know what he means to the team in the clubhouse. He's a leader. He's a heart and soul guy. He's a career Met. But that contract they gave him, I wasn't thrilled when they gave it to him. Because 8 years and that kind of money is a lot for a player like Brandon Nimmo. Now, again, to his credit, he's made himself terrific when he's on the field, got more power, became a plus center fielder when they needed him to be, but then signs that deal and immediately gets paid, more like a center fielder and immediately moves to left. So anyway, that's probably a larger story for a different day. Yeah, Zero. That's my point. The money is not the problem with Nimmo. It's the years. The years were a long time for a guy who, again, to his credit, after starting his career being oft injured, was a healthier player for a stretch. But now, guys don't get healthier as they get older, generally speaking. Anyway, guys, this has been a lot of fun. An hour solo show. Like Brad said, solo till Mets do his part. Just John Sapanaro out here in Burbank, California, talking about Clay Holmes, deserving to be that opening day starter. Super important for the Mets' plans, for their rotation for the entirety of the season as well. Talking about McNeil going down with the injury and how that opens up opportunities for Baty and Acuna. Talking about Manaea being on the mend, how important that is to the rotation, of course. And then finishing things off here with Brandon Nimmo. And just not hating on him, just keeping it real about Brandon Nimmo. Because you got a little bit of stuff to worry about. Pull up this comment here from Ronald. Get out of here on this. We should discuss Marte playing well this spring training. And mentioning the fan ovation for him the other day meant a lot to him. Marte seems like a good dude. I know he had like the, performance-enhancing drug suspension or whatever, but that doesn't mean you're a bad guy. I know some people in baseball look at that like it's a death knell, but not me. I think he is well-liked. Good ovation, and he is playing well in spring. But he better play well, man. He better play well. You guys making $20 million a year. And there's that quote that Carson always brings up, Carson from Mets Weekly, where, it's like the Mets hope that he could still be a major league player about Marte with his injuries. So, he's playing well. He's going to hit if he's healthy. You could do a lot worse than a DH platoon of Winker and Marte. But it's not going to give you a tremendous amount of pop. It's funny with Marte. Marte still runs the bases really well. He's still a plus runner on the bases for a guy with bad legs. He's just not a plus defender anymore. It seems to have affected his defense more. It's probably because of the lateral movement. It's probably because when a ball is hit at you, when a ball's hit, you don't know where it's going to go. Whereas if you're on base, you know where you're going next. There's that turn and burst, and then it's straight line running. It's a little different. Again, never played at the level of Starling Marte, but I played a lot of baseball, still play a lot of softball. I've had a lot of lower leg injuries, and, it's different when you know where you're running and you can just put your head down and run versus trying to make pivots, trying to turn on balls and things like that. So, look, again, I called Marte an albatross contract. I called Marte a stone around the neck of the 26-man roster. I think he is. But I'm not going to root against him because that's counterintuitive to my fandom. The Mets need Marte to be good for one more season because he's going to be here pretty much for the entire season, barring something catastrophic happening. So, he's a part of this team. Darren saying Senga pitched out of a jam. I know the game is going on right now, by the way. So shout out to everybody who's here. Got about just under 200 people on the live stream for a last minute live stream, a solo live stream, a live stream on a Friday night where the weather's pretty good back east, a live stream where the Mets are on concurrently. I appreciate you guys. A lot of familiar faces in the comments. I expected that. When we drop these kind of out of nowhere shows. It's more of the regulars. We don't get a lot of new folks popping in, but you never know. So I appreciate you guys. That said, going to get out of here in a minute. Shout out to all the commenters. Shout out to my co-host, Ibby, who was in the chat. Couldn't make himself available to do the thing that we do, but he always is supportive when he can't, fully commit to being on camera and talking. He's got a family at home. He's got a lot of stuff he's got to take care of. Usually in the chat, sometimes on his phone, doing his thing, making sure he's checking in. And I appreciate that so much. Obviously can't do the show without Ibby. So love when he's here, even if he's just in the comments. And shout out to all you guys. Zero Cool, GSD, Darren Rivera, Armand, Cindy, Brad. I don't want to miss anybody. Jeff Cohen, I saw. D, Ronald. A lot of folks I expected to see. Douglas Barnes. This was fun. Odd Villain. So we'll get out of here on this. But remember, guys, like the video on the way out. Hey, Zero Cool. Shout out to you. Thank you for that. With the $5 super chat. Just cause. No question. Nothing thrown in. Just a $5 thank you. So you know what? Thank you for throwing that out there. Really appreciate that. Armand saying, let's be real, Ibby's Wi-Fi isn't working. That's why he's not here. Cindy saying, thanks for the show. Have a great weekend. Mets fans, LFGM always. And Zero Cool saying, somebody had to do it. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ibby also saying, Zero, my man, saying thank you very much. Appreciate that. So anyway, if you haven't liked the video before you get out of here, go ahead and like the video. If you're not subscribed to the channel, if you're just sitting in the background, you're watching this, you're seeing it for the first time, you're like, I don't know what this is. This is Till Mets Do His Part. This is what we do. Normally it's me and Ibby bouncing stuff back and forth, but the live chat is always rocking. They're always doing their thing. A lot of familiar faces. So subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on so that you never miss an opportunity to know when we're going live. And also so that you can become a member of the chat, because in order to chat, in order to comment and question and all that stuff, you have to be a subscriber. Follow us on social media at Till Mets Do His Part, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, TikTok. Did I miss something? No. At Till Mets Do His Part. And of course, this channel, if you missed anything, you want to go back and watch it, you can check out the live stream. You can check out any of the stuff that we always do after the fact on YouTube at Till Mets Do His Part. And this episode will drop probably later on tonight, maybe by tomorrow morning, on Spotify, Apple, all those places that you get your audio podcasts. So, shout out to you guys. Oh, and as always, show is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I appreciate you. I know Ibby appreciates you. Yes, have a good weekend, everybody. Stay safe. John Sapanaro for Matt Ibby Ibanez. This is Till Mets Do His Part. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.